It's been a particularly dramatic 24 hours, witnessing the Shin Bet and the Mossad in terrorist extraction operations deep inside enemy territory across several different arenas. And further afield, we're watching talks in Florida between United States President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, which could change the political map of the entire Middle East. And speaking of the Middle East, Israel's intelligence echelon is tired of waiting for Hamas to find the remains of fallen hostage Ran Geveli, so they went into Gaza and extracted the Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorist who knows where these remains are buried. This news came on the same day as Hezbollah's Secretary General Naim Qassem accused Israel of doing the same thing on Hezbollah's top man, retired Captain Ahmed Shukal, grabbing him and bringing him back to Israel from deep inside Lebanon. Meanwhile, back in the Gaza Strip, Hamas wanted a flood, but they've got a dulge, a massive winter storm hammering the entire region right now, and the tents that people are living in Gaza can't stand up to it, so Hamas is reacting by abusing civilians and stealing what little they have left. Also, the whole region is holding its breath, waiting for the results of the meeting in Florida between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. From these meetings, a new Gaza will emerge, rehabilitated and without Hamas. However, right now, there is a dispute on almost every point, and we'll bring you a closer look at the tense meeting at Mar-a-Lago amidst hesitation on moving to Phase B in the Gaza ceasefire plan and the possibility of a green light for a strike in Iran, which are the focal points of the Netanyahu-Trump summit at this juncture. And speaking of Iran, the Islamic Republic launched satellite images from Russian territory. Iran launched spy satellites into space this week, even as large-scale protests against Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei broke out in the streets of Tehran. But the long-suffering Iranian people are not the only ones sending messages this week that they've had enough. In the Red Sea, Israel is sending that same message to the Houthis in Yemen, and we'll tell you all about it. So welcome to Boots on the Ground. I'm your host Yair Pinto, bringing you the whole truth about what's happening in Israel during this winter weather. The big story today is that Hezbollah's Secretary General is accusing Israel of snatching a senior Hezbollah terrorist deep inside Lebanon, while another Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorist was extracted from Gaza City. IDF intelligence believes that this terrorist, Muhammad Azam, possesses critical information regarding the location of the fallen hostage Ran Geveli. The return of Geveli's remains was also a subject near the top of the agenda for the meetings on Sunday between United States President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida. Netanyahu is also insisting on the disarmament of Hamas, as previously agreed as a condition for moving to Phase B of the ceasefire agreement. Also discussed was the idea of deploying a stabilization force for Gaza and the establishment of the technocratic body, as well as the situation in Syria, Lebanon, and the Iranian danger. And senior political officials in Jerusalem estimate that agreements will be reached on most of the issues to be discussed in the meeting, and it will be possible to announce the launch of the second phase of the Trump plan in the near-term future. TBN Israel's Middle East analyst, Mati Shoshani, will bring us all the details. And in another big story, we're tracking that this week, Iran launched 3 satellites into space from Russian territory in a move that highlights its reliance on Moscow and the continued developments of its strategic capabilities. The launches also come in the midst of growing regional tension and raises concerns that Tehran is improving the collection and the precision capabilities of its missile arrays ahead of an intense campaign against Israel. But internally, Iran is collapsing as the real currency continues its weakening trend and reaches a new historic low amidst wide protests amongst business owners in Tehran in protest of the worsening economic conditions. So I'm Yair Pinto. With me today is Mati Shoshani, and this is your Boots on the Ground report on day 814 of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shiite militias in Iraq, and all the other armed groups in this region. All of them are acting under the control of the Revolutionary Guards Corps in Iran, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. And a moment before we begin, I want to call on you to keep spreading the truth. The war is not over, and the war for the truth has only begun. The new year will be this year filled with lies, propaganda, and other attempts to bash Israel. So, in honor of the new year together, let's fight fake news. Let's fight anti-Semitic propaganda. Let's share the truth. Let's all be ambassadors of the truth of what's coming in Israel so that we can pray for the peace of Jerusalem. So, we'll start today with an Israeli extraction operation deep inside the Gaza Strip. Sources linked to the terrorist organizations in Gaza and additional sources from within the Gaza Strip revealed that Israel carried out a covert operation in the heart of Gaza Strip as part of efforts to locate the fallen hostage Ran Gaveli. And according to the report, Muhammad Azam, a member of the military wing of the Islamic Jihad, was extracted from an area near the El Mamdani Hospital and Palestine Square in the center of Gaza City. The sources note that the extraction point is about 1 kilometer from the Yellow Line and that the operation took place a few days ago. It was also reported that security officials in Israel are convinced that the operative who was captured was directly involved in holding Gaveli, and the report adds that during a visit of an Israeli delegation to Cairo about a month ago, Israeli officials passed the mediators a list of names of senior figures who were involved in holding Gaveli. The name of the recently extracted terrorist from the Palestinian Islamic Jihad was on that list, and this is according to sources that are familiar with the details. So sources in the Palestinian Islamic Jihad told media portals this week Gaveli's remains was indeed in the hands of their operative, and after a short period they handed it over to operatives and field commanders in Hamas's military wing inside Gaza City for several reasons, including coordination between the two factions in Gaza, Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hamas. Hamas sources confirmed that the remains had been in their possession for a long time and were held by them for several months before the ceasefire in the Zaytun neighborhood. However, they further claimed that everyone who supervised the holding of the body and everyone who knew its location were eliminated in separate operations. According to Israeli intelligence officials, Azam is one of 4 Palestinian Islamic Jihad operatives who are likely to know the location where Gaveli's remains are currently buried. According to those sources, Gaveli's remains have been moved more than once as IDF forces were close by and the terrorists were worried that the remains would be found by them. Once again, Azam's name, together with the names of the 3 additional operatives believed to have knowledge of Gaveli's burial spot, were passed to Hamas via Egypt so the remains could be recovered by Hamas and handed over to Israel. But Hamas did not move on this information, so now Israel has taken the matter into its own hands. That brings us to another story about Israeli teams extracting a terrorist operative with important information from deep behind enemy lines. I'm talking about a recent accusation by Hezbollah Secretary General Naim Qassem that the Lebanese government was either helpless or perhaps complicit in recent Israeli intelligence gathering operations on the Lebanese soil. In a speech delivered over the weekend and broadcasted on various media platforms, Qassem claimed that Israel continues to carry out assassinations, airstrikes, and security penetrations while the Lebanese state refrains from responding or defending its sovereignty. At the center of his remarks, Qassem presented a new claim that Israel recently carried out an operation to extract a Lebanese citizen, whom he identified as a retired captain Ahmed Shukr. Qassem also said that war does not threaten us. We will stand firm We will defend ourselves and Lebanon. We will not disarm as Israel and the United States want. We will not initiate an aggressive act. Now, a word of explanation is in order here. To extract someone alive in one country and transfer him, even alive, to another country that borders the country from which he was taken is not a simple story. So to move someone, not by land, but in a way that requires passing through air or seaports, when the individual is not cooperating with the people trying to move him in order to keep him alive on the one hand, but not to risk that he suddenly starts shouting and drawing attention to himself on the other hand, is a very complex situation, and it requires a complex set of procedures and maybe a bit of luck as well. However, if the person that is being moved is cooperating with the people trying to move him, that's a whole different story. Now, add to this scenario the fact that in this case, the individual who was supposedly extracted was taken from an area in Lebanon that is under intense security observation and protection to prevent this very thing from happening. This becomes a very complex operation. So Qassem is saying that this individual was taken from deep inside Lebanon in a Shiite-dominated area against his will. This is a man who would have served many years in intelligence and has rich experience and is naturally alert and suspicious, especially considering the place that he comes from and his respected relatives who were eliminated in recent years. If you add to that the rising tensions in recent months between Israel and Hezbollah, the result is that an extraction operation like this is worth doing and investing efforts to carry out only if you really need it and it's really worth it. So, what makes this individual worth investing so much time, money, effort, and resources in extracting? One possibility is that this individual who was supposedly extracted against his will might have knowledge about a mystery Israelis have been trying to solve for decades, and that's the fate of Ron Arad, the weapons system officer on an Israeli F-4 Phantom, which went down over southern Lebanon in 1986. He is believed to have been captured by the Amal movement and later handed over to Hezbollah before passing away in captivity and being buried somewhere in the Bekaa Valley. Israel would like to have his remains returned to Israel, and perhaps this extracting is related to this situation. What do you think? Did this person have any information about Ron Arad? Do you think that he came willingly to Israel or he was extracted by force from Hezbollah? Let me know in the comments. Maybe he wanted to get out of there because he was tired of life in Lebanon and he wanted to try something different. So he offered to give Israel the information that they wanted in exchange for help leaving his old life behind. Or was he taken unwillingly? What do you think? Very complicated and very interesting story. In any case, here at TBN Israel, we will keep tracking this story and bringing the latest update as they become available. In just a moment, we'll move on to the report about the meeting between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. We will also continue to report all the truth about what's happening in Israel, and we need your support to keep spreading it, because while Qatar funds the spread of lies and fake news through their mouthpieces like Tucker Carlson, we stand day after day independently against evil. And all we need from you is that you help us share this content and hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. And now, I want to take a moment to talk to you about one of our partners for today's video. Right now, in Israel, thousands of soldiers are serving on the front lines, standing in harm's way to protect their communities and their homeland. They're strong, they're committed, and they're prepared. But there is still more that we can do to support them by helping provide the extra equipment that keeps them safer, more protected, and better equipped to face what lies ahead. The Israel Magen Fund is working to empower these soldiers with critical gear, including ceramic bulletproof vests, tactical helmets, protective eyewear, advanced backpacks, and other essentials that help meet the real field needs. This isn't about comfort, it's about survival. And every piece of gear makes a tangible difference for someone's son, someone's brother, someone's friend who is risking everything. At a time when we pray for peace, we're also called to stand with those who carry the burden of defense, both physically and spiritually. Every gift is an act of gratitude, of partnership, and of faith. So if you want to take part and help the IDF soldiers and the security personnel of Israel, make sure to visit israelmagenfund.org/give. Again, that's israelmagenfund.org/give. And stand with the people of Israel. And now, we're getting back into the news because as President Trump hosts Prime Minister Netanyahu at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida for high-level talks, which will have a decisive impact on the future of the entire Middle East, they are marking a new yellow line, and Hamas is left behind. TBN Israel senior Middle East analyst Mati Shoshani will bring us all the information about the plan that Netanyahu will bring to Trump in these meetings. This is not about rehabilitation. It's a calculated strangulation strategy against Hamas and an understanding that is taking shape. Gaza's rehabilitation will begin only in areas under Israeli control and will expand gradually to up to about 75% of the Strip to create continuous civilian pressure on Hamas without waiting for its disarmament. Of course, Iran will also be a hot topic during these meetings, and that could have a dramatic consequence for all of us. So Mati, what's going on?
Tonight in the USA, President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu are planned to meet to talk about the big next steps taking place in the Middle East. This is all happening after a very extended and very tense season in which things have been moved way too slow, way too sluggish in moving forward. The main issue on the table is, of course, the Gaza Strip and the day after. And this meeting is coming together. This meeting is aimed at jump-starting this entire process. The main item on the table is the rebuilding of the Gaza Strip. The big elephant in the room has been for months at this point, who will be the force on the ground in the Gaza Strip that will make sure that will allow the next phase to kick into action, that will allow the IDF to withdraw and international forces to come into the Gaza Strip and rebuild it. And since that force has not materialized up till now, and doesn't seem it will anytime in the foreseeable future, what we're looking at is something entirely different. It's trying to rebuild while the IDF is still the one on the ground, while the IDF is still the one that is controlling the Gaza Strip. Now, the IDF currently controls about half, a little over 50%, or roughly around 50% of the Gaza Strip area behind what is called the yellow line that it withdrew to several months ago. And the idea is to start rebuilding the Gaza Strip in that area, in the Israeli-controlled, IDF-controlled area, and then go from there and slowly build into what is currently being controlled by the Hamas, hoping to work through that. Now that's really the big issue on the table, is getting it to move forward. The big challenge has been, the big desire has been by the US government, is to show some kind of achievement, some kind of momentum, some kind of substantial change that will take place. That hasn't happened yet, and people are getting frustrated. But don't get me wrong, and don't get them wrong, Israel and the United States are exactly on the same page over here. The Israeli Prime Minister with the Trump White House, they're working hand in hand on this topic and have been since the get-go. And really the big question is how do they make forward momentum? How do they move forward? How do they make something change in a positive way? That's really the essence, the crux of this entire meeting that's taking place tonight. So let's just talk for a second about what Plan B or Phase B is supposed to be. For months now we've been hearing about Phase 2, Phase B of the Trump 20-point plan. It used to be a little more than that. Let's call it the 20-point plan. And that really is the plan to substantially rebuild, redo the Middle East. It's been a long time coming. It's been a very, very hard plan to see materialize, specifically because the holdback so far has been the question of the Gaza Strip. How does the Gaza Strip change? How is it rebuilt? How does a force come in that replaces Hamas as the governing factor in that area? But the plan now is to find a way, with this meeting between Trump and Netanyahu, to push forward the agreement. To push forward the agreement in a way where it can finally move forward to a phase of rebuilding the Gaza Strip and in extension, the region. And that's really the big hope here, that this move, it kickstarts the entire change that's planned in this region. Gaza first, and then everything else that happens after that. The second really big chunk of this conversation is Lebanon. And here, when it comes to Lebanon, Israel and the United States are completely working hand in hand, completely of a like mind when it comes to what's happening in Lebanon in the next day. And here are the facts on that. First of all, Hezbollah is still somewhat in control and still too powerful in Lebanon. Secondly, the Lebanese government and the Lebanese army have been way too slow in operating and moving forward in that region. And because of that, Israel and the United States are looking at something more substantial, a squeeze on the Lebanese government, a more regional, powerful move to force Hezbollah out and to continue, of course, through Syria and through American and Israeli forces on the ground and in the air in this region, preventing Iran from rebuilding Hezbollah, from re-strengthening it and slowly squeezing it out of this region. So the main two topics on the table for the Trump meeting with Netanyahu are, of course, one, the Gaza Strip and how to move into the day after. And the option that they've been presenting is this simple sort of halfway move, which is we work with what we have on the ground right now. If Israel controls give or take half of the Gaza Strip, then we rebuild that half of the Gaza Strip. Once it controls more, or someone else comes in and solves the problem, then we rebuild that. And again, remember, in southern Israel, which is a very different weather than what you're seeing over here right now, I'm in Judea and Samaria, in southern Israel, there's already a substantial contingency of American and many other forces that are there to rebuild the region. That they have the logistical, the humanitarian, the military know-how. It's all waiting for those boots on the ground in the Gaza Strip. And if for the foreseeable future those boots on the ground are the IDF, well, so be it. Let's start rebuilding. So that's that. Second part, Lebanon. Let's rebuild Lebanon as fast as we can. Let's squeeze out Hezbollah. Let's get them out of the picture. And then the third piece is, what do we do with Iran? Now, the Ayatollah regime in the Islamic Republic in Iran, they've been an issue, even though Israel and the United States in Operation Midnight Hammer dealt them a very substantial blow back in June, and yet they continue to manufacture missiles, and yet they continue to fabricate and generate threats against Israel and others in this region. And there's been talk for weeks now about a possible secondary strike on Iran, or Iran trying to strike against Israel or Israeli targets. Now, let me tell you my opinion on that. I don't see that happening anytime soon. I think they're fighting to hold on for their position. They're fighting to hold on to their government within Iran. And what we can expect to see is additional sanctions and pressure, both on a military level and a diplomatic level, by the US and its allies in this region to make sure Iran doesn't pick up or bob up its evil head once again in this region. Again, these are very, very important and dramatic days ahead of us. This meeting between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, they're here for an important reason. They're meeting because we need to jumpstart this phase 2, this phase B movement in this region towards the Trump 20-point plan, towards a shifted and changed and augmented reality here in the Middle East, towards something better of stability and rebuilding. There's a lot of good that's been sort of prepared and built up in this region, and now it's time to put the full blast, the afterburners on to really get to that moment. And I hope this is realistic. I hope it's a practical, a very pragmatic conversation in which everyone speaks clearly, realistically about what's really able to happen, and we start rebuilding Gaza Strip without the Hamas forces. Israel is still very much at the ready to fight against Hamas, at the ready to fight against our enemies up north and our enemies in the east, the Iranians. But our goal is to really rebuild and do something for the better of this region. It's been a rough couple years, of course, for Israel, but for everyone else here. And the thing we need now, the thing you guys should be praying for, is to rebuild the Gaza Strip and then to rebuild this region without Hamas, without Hezbollah, without their evil Iranian overlords sort of lurking in the shadows. That is what we need. And hopefully, this meeting between President Trump and Netanyahu is another kick in the, or push in the right direction. Now back to Yair Pinto.
Okay, Mati, thank you very much for putting things in order. What I understand is that what Trump and Netanyahu decide in Mar-a-Lago will not solve all the problems in just one day, but this is the first time since October 7th that one clear plan is placed on the table with names of enemies, red lines, and also a possible direction to victory. We will pray for every decision that comes out of these meetings, and we will also continue to spread the truth. So share and follow us, and most importantly, hit that subscribe button, guys. And now, we're going to dive a little deeper into the subject of Iran, because according to a report this week from the news portal Iran International, the Revolutionary Guards are no longer satisfied with regular ballistic missiles like the ones that largely failed to penetrate Israel's air defense system during the 12-day war in June. So now, they are beginning to develop unconventional warheads for their missiles, which can carry chemical and biological weapons, while at the same time moving launchers to eastern Iran, where they think that they will be safer from Israeli airstrikes. According to the report, from Tehran's perspective, this is a complementary deterrent factor, a message to Israel and the United States that if the confrontation becomes direct, the price will be much heavier and Israeli civilians are the marked target. However, if the report is true, it means crossing a dangerous red line. The Iranian regime is signaling that it is ready to break even its own religious and international commitments when it feels its very existence is threatened. This dramatically raises the risk that a regional war could turn into a much bigger conflict, and the Iranian regime is not only exposing itself to the risk of psychological annihilation, but also global condemnation. Even Iran's allies in Moscow and Beijing will not want to see them introduce unconventional weapons into the Middle East, and will not stand in the way of anyone trying to stop this from happening. This crisis could escalate literally at any moment, and so I'm asking you, as a personal favor to me and to my family and friends who live here in Israel, to be in urgent prayer about all this situation. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. To give some guidance to your prayers, let me explain a few things. For Israel, this is not just progress in the missile program. It is a game changer. It could push Jerusalem and Washington to tougher sanctions, consider preemptive moves, and prepare for a threat that crosses borders and states. When the possibility of chemical and biological warheads enters the equation, a single miscalculation can turn into a disaster on a historic scale. In a related development, on Sunday, Iran launched 3 satellites into space from Russian territory, according to an official report. This is another step in a chain of launches carried out in recent years, indicating a deepening of strategic cooperation between Tehran and Moscow in the fields of space and military technology. Iran, which struggles to launch satellites from its own territory due to the technological limitations and international sanctions, is relying more and more on Russian launch infrastructures. This is one of many factors tightening the strategic bonds between Russia and Iran, and this is a very negative trend for Israel's perspective for all kinds of reasons. And on that note, this week, Iran's ambassador to Russia declared that the satellites were developed entirely by Iranian experts and presented the launch as a proof of his country's scientific capability despite international pressure. According to him, the cooperation between the countries includes areas that are public alongside additional areas that are not detailed. Although this is not direct proof of preparations for an Iranian attack on Israel, security officials around the world note that Iranian satellites may improve Tehran's missile array's intelligence gathering and also accuracy capabilities. A very large percentage of the technological and engineering skills that you need to launch ballistic missiles is also applicable to launching rockets into space. So any work done in one area is applicable to the other. And these Iranian capabilities may affect the balance of deterrence and the readiness of the countries in this region. So, the continuation of the launches alongside the ever-depending cooperation with Russia points to a clear trend. Iran is working to strengthen its strategic capabilities, both in space and in the military sphere, while bypassing the restrictions imposed on it by the West. However, it's also important to point out that the satellites that Iran launched into space on Sunday have no military value of their own. Also, their quality is rather poor, and they are not intended to collect intelligence on Israel or other places and, for example, enable precision targeting of missiles or anything like that. That is not to say that is not a troubling development from Israel's point of view, and we should keep an eye on the Iranian satellite, but at least for the moment, Iran's level in the space field is not such that it should raise too much concerns for us. Israel's own satellites, by the way, are world-class and provide us with all kinds of advantages and capabilities, some of which were on display in the 12-day war in June. Iran's military leaders know all about that, and I'm sure that they're very envious. But for now, Iran's capabilities are not on the same level as Israel's capabilities in space. But that doesn't mean that Iran doesn't have any space capabilities. We must remember that 3 years ago, Iran placed a satellite in orbit that was built by Russian engineers and that has security value. Such a satellite that passes over the Middle East, including over Israel, can certainly provide the Iranians with good quality intelligence, and this is of course something that can support their missile program. It's one more thing to pray about, as we know that God is in control of what's happening in space, just as He is in control of what's happening on Earth. In any case, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to bring you the whole truth. So share, follow, and most importantly, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. To conclude today's report, we're shifting our focus far to Israel's south on the east coast of the African continent, and a new country that Israel just extended diplomatic recognition to, and that's Somaliland. Why would Israel do this? What does Israel have to do with this place? The answer is everything. Israel's enemies in Iran and the Houthis in Yemen are outraged and deeply alarmed at this development, which has also drawn the attention of the United Nations Security Council, just to give you an idea of how big a deal this is. Right now, a new military axis is forming between Jerusalem and Hargeisa, the capital of Somaliland. Commentators call this move the Red Strategy, a quiet alliance that is becoming more visible against the backdrop of the escalation in the Red Sea. The starting point of this story is the threat posed at the shipping lanes around the Bab el-Mandab Straits coming from the Houthis in Yemen, which have effectively left Israel without the ability to bring goods into the Red Sea port of Eilat in the southern part of Israel, or export Israeli goods from that port. This is all because the Houthis in Yemen have attacked merchant ships moving in and out of the Red Sea on the pretext of supporting Hamas in the Gaza Strip against Israel. Israel has been enduring this de facto naval blockade for over 2 years now, and it's time for something to change. Naval patrols alone are no longer enough, and Israel is looking for a forward position, an observation point close to the Houthis and safe enough for establishing a presence. Somaliland is preferred over Somalia, which is in an unstable state, saturated with deep foreign influence, while Somaliland is pro-Western and aspires to international legitimacy. This makes it an opportunity for Israel's defensive planners, and there is also a mutual interest as Somaliland gives Israel new strategic depth in the Red Sea, and in return seeks recognition. It is describable as a reliable Muslim partner, not identified with Iran, not identified with Turkey, or with extremist movements, and a possible relationship with it could break decades of silence. Alongside the opportunity, there are also risks because the government of Somalia, supported by Turkey and Qatar, obviously sees this Israeli move as a hostile step that would complicate their own plans and their own agendas. Of course, the official narrative is that it complicates regional peacekeeping efforts, but this is just diplomatic language meant to deflect attention from the real issues. Nevertheless, Egypt and Saudi Arabia, which are sensitive to regional fragmentation, may pressure Israel to back down, while Iran and Turkey may interrupt the Israeli presence in Somaliland as a direct threat. For now, there's no way to know how this story will play out, but one thing is for sure: Israel's diplomatic recognition of Somaliland and the signal that it sends of deepening cooperation between the two countries has upset a lot of long-standing norms in the Middle East, and a lot of people aren't happy about it. Apparently, when Israel does something that gives it any kind of strategic advantage over its enemies, that is considered to be deeply out of order, by a lot of governments, not only in the Middle East, but all over the world. So guys, just wanted to take you on a little walk behind the scenes of what's happening as we're recording Boots. So this is the rainiest time I've seen in Israel in the past year. It's just a blessing, but check out. Okay, need to fix the drains a little bit, but I wanted to show you the backyard and the view. Wow, check this out, guys. Somewhere over there, that's Jerusalem. So guys, behind me over there, that's Jerusalem. You can't see it because of all the rain and all the water, but it is a blessing to have rain here in Israel. I love it, and we'll keep reporting every day, rain or sun, boots on the ground. Keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem. Therefore, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to pray together, and I also want to ask you to help us share the truth and hit that subscribe button, guys. Thanks for watching Boots on the Ground. Pray for the peace of the people of Israel. Pray for the IDF soldiers wherever they are, and pray for the peace of Jerusalem. See you again tomorrow.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.